Welcome to the Weekly Roar, coming live from the Lion's Den, helping new managers become great leaders and awesome bosses. And now, here's your host, Greg Storch.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome to the Weekly Roar. Thanks for coming back to the Lion's Den for this week's watch party. It's time again to talk about another concept in the foundations of leadership. But before I jump into today's topic, let me introduce myself for those of you who might be watching for the first time. I'm Greg Storch, and I am the founder of Lion Enterprise, a leadership development and coaching business where I'm placing my focus on helping organizations develop positive work cultures. I'm a certified professional leadership coach, and I'm also a certified speaker and trainer. Okay, now that that's out of the way, did you join me for the Weekly Roar last Wednesday? Because I continued my series called Follow the Leader: Concepts in the Foundations of Leadership. Last week's topic was about getting buy-in from your followers. I called it When Failure is Not an Option. Good leaders will do anything they can to ensure their team wins. And I call that having a victory mindset. And those who have it don't ever entertain the idea of failure. It's just not an option. Listen, if you did not make it into the Lion's Den for the Weekly Roar last week, don't sweat it. All you have to do is jump over to my website at www.lion-enterprise.com. Click up on the Lion's Pride library and you'll see all of my videos there. Last week's video is number 65, and it's a great way for you to get more of the roar. So I'm calling this week's concept the one and only difference maker. Yes, today I'm talking about how important it is for leaders to be able to not only get things moving, but keep them moving once they build momentum. You can have everything you need to execute on your vision, but if you can't get your team or organization moving in the right direction, if you're staying stagnant, then in nautical terms, you're dead in the water. All right, what do you say we jump into this concept? This might sound obvious to some of you, but when it comes to leadership, you have to have motion in order to succeed. You have to have some kind of action. You have to be moving in a forward motion. As a matter of fact, creating motion or movement for your team or organization is one of the biggest allies you'll have as a leader. I can give you the best people, I can give you all the tools you need, and you can even be so passionate about your vision that you believe it's your purpose in life. But without the ability to get things moving in the right direction, none of that will matter. And that's why I say that the ability to create that forward motion for the team can be a leader's best friend. It can mean the difference between success and failure every time. And it's the one thing that you can control. Without creating motion, movement in the right direction, everything will seem difficult or even impossible sometimes. It becomes so hard just to get things started. Have you ever seen one of those old-fashioned steam locomotives trying to get started from a dead stop? It's a great analogy for what I'm talking about here. Whenever a train is trying to get started from a dead standstill, it seems to take forever. Right? Well, the same goes for creating motion with your teams or within your organization. In the beginning, it seems impossible. Everything can show up as a challenge. And this is a very dangerous time for those you are leading, especially when it comes to their morale, because it can be very low. Why? Because think about it. Trying to build up momentum is difficult, and everything seems to always be harder than it needs to be. If the teams are continuously experiencing this type of resistance, it's really easy to get down on themselves. They just never seem to get a win. They can't even seem to get going. You can see this sort of thing happening in sports all the time. My wife is a New Orleans Saints fan, and I follow the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I've witnessed this happen with my own two eyes. Now, our teams just happen to be in the same conference. So every year we play each other twice, once in Tampa Bay and once in New Orleans. When we lived stateside, we used to go to one of the two games every year. Well, one year, our teams were playing each other down in the Big Easy, New Orleans, Louisiana, and it was on Christmas Eve. Now, as I watched the game unfold, I could see how the Saints were able to build and keep momentum in the space of just a couple of hours to win the game by a complete shutout. Yes, the final score of that game, 41-0. The Saints got onto a scoring roll early in the game. It was like every time they had possession of the football, they scored a touchdown. They were unstoppable, obviously. They were literally unstoppable. We didn't score 1 point that game. Now, what's interesting about this concept of riding that wave of forward motion is that the opposite also can hold true. Now, for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, that wasn't good news. See, no matter how hard they worked or how many different plays they called, nothing seemed to work. So while it seems difficult at first to get the team or the organization moving in a forward motion, once you get it going, it can be unstoppable. Now, remember that train analogy I just mentioned about trying to get the locomotive started? Well, if we continue that analogy, then a team that does pick up motion and continues to move forward is like that same train running at full speed downhill. It just keeps building and building until almost any obstacle to its progress fails to stop it. It just keeps rolling through it like a speeding bullet. I want to share a story with you that I think really depicts this concept. A little over a year ago, I started this small group of about 26 coaches in a coaching circle. We had all just graduated from our coaching program. The coaching circle was really designed to allow us to coach one another as a way to enhance our coaching skills and gain confidence in the profession. For several months, it was just the 26 coaches. I would pair coaches together. I'd introduce them through email, And then they would take the relationship and establish their own coaching schedules with each other. Now, we tried to do 12 sessions, which tends to mimic a typical coaching agreement. But some coaches finished sooner than other coaches. When it was time to reassign coaches with new partners, I had to wait for a coach to come available, which delayed the assignment. It was really a struggle at first. I couldn't get this thing going, just like that locomotive, right? But then I started actively recruiting more coaches, and by month 4, we had grown from 26 coaches to over 150 coaches. Now I had tons of coaches across several time zones that made pairing coaches together easier and faster because of that growth. For the next 3 months, the program grew by about 10 coaches a month. But in January of this year, I was lucky enough to be the guest speaker on a webinar for coaches, and they highlighted my program. Within the next 30 days, the program grew by another 250 coaches. Just 6 months after starting this small coaching group, I had grown the program to well over 400 coaches across multiple states and even in a few different countries. At the time I reached the 1-year mark, word of mouth and active social media campaigns brought the numbers of participants in my program to just over 550 coaches in 21 countries and 44 states. But that is the motion that I'm talking about. It's riding that wave, one success after another, to keep winning and growing and moving forward. The program is like that locomotive gaining steam as it rolls down the tracks. If you want your teams or your department or your organization to be successful, you should think about this concept of building up motion, gaining momentum, and how you can capitalize on it. If you do, here are a few things that you should consider. First of all, when you start to experience that forward motion, the movement of your teams going forward together, things are going to appear as if you were looking at them in the side mirror of your car. You know how the mirrors have that little warning printed on them that says, "Warning, objects in the mirror may appear closer than they are." Things can really get exaggerated once you get that momentum going. Once that locomotive starts rolling down the tracks, it's hard to stop it. And that's why leaders try really hard to control that motion. It has such a huge impact on your teams. You know, if we go back to the football story where my team got shut out by the Saints, every time the Saints would be setting up for a critical play, the Bucs head coach would call a timeout. Why was he doing that? Because he was trying to stop the Saints' momentum before it was too late, before it became unstoppable. You guys have heard of Sir Isaac Newton. Sir Isaac Newton gave us the first law of motion, which states in part that a body at rest will stay at rest unless an outside force acts upon it. An outside force in this case is leadership, the leader. So the cool thing is that once you have motion on your side and you and your team or your department or the organization continue to build up that speed, you no longer sweat the small stuff, and the bigger problems, they kind of tend to work themselves out. If you're able to create this forward motion as a leader, over time, it's going to make you look like this awesome leader, probably even better than you might really be. Why does that happen? Because when you have movement forward working for you, people think the leader is a master practitioner at leadership. Everything's going great. They tend to look past any of the mistakes that the leader has made along the way, because that momentum changes the team's perspective of the leader. All they keep seeing is progress, win after win, which is what is creating the continuous forward motion of the team. When I first started that coaching group, I had no idea what I was doing. The more coaches that joined and the wider the network grew, it seemed the more mistakes I made. You know, there were a few times when I assigned a coach that had already been assigned to someone else. The thing is that the coaches saw immense value in the program that I had started, and I was receiving tons of kudo emails and messages about how awesome this program really was. See, they weren't focused on my mistakes, and they really thought I was this brilliant leader to create such a huge, beneficial program. So, be aware that one of the side effects of getting your organization moving forward is that it can exaggerate your success and kind of make you look a little better than you actually may be. Hardly seems fair, but it's a fact that you should be aware of. Just remember, you may not be as good as people give you credit for being. So stay humble and stay focused on the forward momentum. Don't ever be fooled that you're as great as everyone thinks you are. Hey, have you ever played on a winning sports team? Because if you have, you'll probably remember that feeling you got to want to contribute to the success of that team. When teams, not just sports teams, but departments and organizations are riding that wave of success, forward motion, they get inspired to perform at levels that they normally wouldn't perform at. You see, even average people can perform far above average in an organization that has great momentum moving forward. Okay, this is a throwback all the way back to the 80s. Maybe some of you weren't even born yet, but remember the Miracle on Ice? The Miracle on Ice is a great example of what I'm talking about. So I mentioned this was back in the 80s. Actually, I think it was 1980. Nobody had high hopes for the U.S. Olympic team in hockey. They were actually seeded 7th in the hockey tournament, but it seemed like almost out of nowhere, the team quickly silenced the naysayers by making it through the opening rounds undefeated, and they made it all the way to the medal rounds. Now, these wins that they were experiencing built up so much momentum for them that the players all started playing at a level that just wasn't expected. Long story short, the US team defeated the Russian Dream Team, the ones who were expected to take the tournament and win the gold in the Olympics. Oh, and by the way, during a previous exhibition match, they had crushed the US team 10-3. But anyway, they were riding, the US hockey team was riding that wave of momentum after the huge win against Russia. And then they went on to actually beat Finland to win the gold medal. Now that's what happens to ordinary people in unordinary circumstances when they have the power of forward motion on their side. They're able to perform well above the expected level of performance. Now, when it comes to average performance and making that shift to start gaining traction, nothing supports the changes needed to do that quite like momentum. Having momentum on your side makes change in an organization possible and easier. They call momentum the great change agent. You see, people love to jump on the winning bandwagon. You've seen it during sports teams, sports seasons, baseball, World Series, Super Bowls, when normal fans, when their teams start doing well, they jump on the bandwagon. Why? Because they want to be associated with winning. So they jump on the winning bandwagon. And followers naturally trust leaders who have a history of top performance. Those are the same followers who will accept the needed changes to keep that organization moving in the forward direction win after win. But the last thing that I want to share with you is best described in a quote by author Eleanor Doan. And she said, "You cannot kindle a fire in any other heart until it's burning within your own." In other words, this forward motion, the movement needed to succeed, that has to be alive within the leader before it can become alive within those they lead. Now, as a leader, you have to have the vision, the passion, the enthusiasm, the energy in order to get the ball rolling and make those small gains. Get the train moving away from the platform on its way down the tracks. When you model that for those you lead, you'll naturally motivate others to strive to achieve as well. And that's when the locomotive will pick up steam and start barreling down the tracks. When you see this happening, you will see it as your old friend, motion, the one thing you can always count on to take teams to the finish line to victory. So you're probably asking yourself at this point, how do I get the ball rolling for my teams, my organization, my department? Say you already have the vision. Maybe you have the team you already need in place, the best players, but nothing's happening. You can't seem to get the train to pull away from the station, so to speak. Well, one of the key factors to moving forward together is motivation. Motivation helps you to develop that forward motion. But before you can really motivate your team members, you have to eliminate or minimize those things that may be demotivating them. Now, this reminds me of a movie I once saw called The New Guy. during that movie, there was this nerdy character who was being trained by a con man. And in one of the scenes, the nerdy character was trying to climb a rope. Now, the demotivating factor was he wasn't strong and he had this huge rope he was trying to climb up. And I remember the character saying, I need a little motivation. And the guy at the bottom took out a lighter and lit the rope on fire. So that was the motivation to get that forward motion. The guy climbed all the way up. Of course, the rope burned and he fell down to the mat. But anyway, it was a great visual that I remember from the new guy. So maybe you need to survey the team for feedback to find out what may be causing them to lose their enthusiasm for their work. Maybe there's a policy in place that needs to be revisited. Whatever it is, remove those barriers first before you start to try to motivate the team. The last thing I wanted to share with you, and I can't stress this enough, if you want to be the cheerleader of motion for the team, then you have to take time to celebrate their wins. Celebrate their accomplishments, no matter how small they are. Pat them on the back. Find ways to honor those who are contributing to keeping the team moving in a forward direction. And remember, you want to praise effort, but reward accomplishment. The more you reward success, the more people are going to strive for it. That's how you create forward movement. I hope that made sense to you as another concept in the foundations of leadership. You have to ride that wave of momentum. It's your best friend as a leader, and it can make all the difference between success and failure. It'll be your biggest advocate when it comes time for change. Without that forward momentum, if you can't get your followers heading in the right direction, you'll be dead in the water as a leader, and you will not succeed no matter how grand the vision or how strong the team. Hopefully now you see the importance of harnessing that leader's best friend, motion. Okay, everyone, there's another concept in the foundations of leadership. Please leave your thoughts and comments down below and let me know what you think. Thanks so much for tuning in again this week for another weekly roar. I appreciate your support. And remember, if you like this content, please share out the video link to your networks. The weekly roar video will be posted here after the watch party. Don't share the actual watch party link because once the watch party ends, it can't be viewed. Okay, you guys, I'm going to be back here again next week, same place, same time, to speak about another concept in the foundations of leadership. Next week, I want to talk about the importance for leaders never to confuse motion with progress. You know what they say about a rocking horse? It can keep moving and never get anywhere. We'll be talking about how good leaders always prioritize activities to ensure the right actions are taken to create that forward progress. All right, everybody, until we meet again next week, remember, be powerful, but stay poised just like a lion. Bye, everybody.
Thanks for watching the Weekly Roar live event at lionenterprise.com. If you enjoyed this video, please tell others to join us each week here in the Lion's Den. Thanks again, and see you next week.